Okay, this video is for Algebra 1, and we're looking at parallel and perpendicular slopes today. Parallel lines you learned in junior high are two lines that never cross. They will never touch each other. This is because they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines you learned cross and form a 90-degree angle. This is because their slope is the negative reciprocal. What you do to get the negative reciprocal is you change the sign and you flip the fraction. Before you can figure out parallel versus perpendicular, you need to be able to find the slope. If you're given an equation, you have to make sure y is by itself. And if y is by itself, it is the number in front of x for your slope. X is not part of the slope, just the number. If they give you 2 points, you're going to want to put them in your calculator. You go to Stat, Edit, put your points in, and then go Stat Calc 4. The number with A is your slope. So looking at number 1, they gave an equation. Y is already by itself. That's a good thing. So your slope is the number in front of x. So for this one, it's 2/3. The parallel line slope would have to be the same thing, so it would also be 2/3. A perpendicular line slope needs 2 changes. Change the sign. It was positive, now it's negative. Flip the fraction. It was 2/3, now it's 3/2. And you're done. Y equal 1/2 x plus 2. Y is by itself. Your slope is the number with x, so it is 1/2. Once again, we do not put the x with it. Parallel lines have the same slope, so a parallel line would have the slope of 1/2. For perpendicular, you have to make 2 changes. Change the sign, so it becomes negative, and 1/2 becomes 2/1. You could also write this as -2. You do not have to make it a fraction. Y equal 3x minus 5. Y is by itself. The number with x is your slope, so your slope is 3. A parallel line would also have a slope of 3. Perpendicular line, you have to make 2 changes, so we know it's going to be negative. You got to have it as a fraction before you can flip it, so you have to think of it as 3/1. When you flip it, it becomes 1/3. Y equal -3/4 x. -3/4 is with your x, so that is your slope. To be parallel, it would be the same thing, so -3/4. To be perpendicular, you have to change the sign, so it becomes positive, and you flip the fraction, and it is 4/3. Okay, this one does not have y by itself, so everything has to be divided by 4. And you get y is equal to -3x plus 5. So your slope is the number in front of x, so it will be -3. Parallel line will have the same slope, so it will also be -3. And the perpendicular, you're going to change the sign. It becomes positive. It was 3/1. You flip that, and it becomes a positive 1/3. On this one, you're going to have to move your 3x, and that gives you y is equal to -2 minus 3x. It is minus 3x because when you cross the equal sign, you have to change it to the opposite. So now we're going to look in front of x. Notice that it wasn't at the beginning, it was at the end. You're only concerned about the fact that it is with x. So your slope of this line is -3. To be parallel, you would have the same slope of -3. To be perpendicular, you would change the sign so it becomes positive. Think of it as 3/1. It flips and becomes 1/3. If they give you points, you're going to want to put this in your calculator at Stat. Okay, so looking at the back of your notes handout, they change it, and instead of giving an equation, they give a set of points. Now, we learned previously that you can subtract the y's on top and the x's on bottom when you have points to find your slope. So for this one, it would be like saying 5 minus 3 over 6 minus 0, which is equal to 5 minus 3, which is 2, over 6 minus 0 is 6. Important thing is you have to reduce this. 2/6 reduces to 1/3. And that's fine, and it's really probably the fastest way to do it. But if you struggle with that, here is a different way to find the slope using your calculator when you're given 2 points. You take it to Stat, which is over here kind of by the green key. Enter, because you're choosing Edit. You need to clear out everything in there. So I went up to my L2 and I hit clear enter. Then I go over and up to my L1, clear enter. If you do not see L1 and L2 at the top, you're going to need to reset your calculator, so call me over. So L1 is your X values for your points, and L2 is the Y values for your points. So I have a 0 and a 6 for my X values. So 0, enter, 6, enter for L1. L2 is going to be 3, enter, and 5, enter. It's important that when you look at this, it's like you're seeing your point, 0, 3, 6, 5. Once you have your points in, you're going to go back to Stat, you're going to go over to Calc, and you're always going to choose number 4 for linear regression. It's going to pull this up on your home screen. You have to press enter. Now, y equal ax plus b, a is 0.333, b is 3, ignore the r squared and the r. The a value is your slope, so that is 0.333. You should recognize that as being 1/3. So that's just a kind of a backup way to find it. So remembering what we're learning today, parallel lines have the same slope. So if the slope of the original line is 1/3, the slope of the parallel line is also 1/3. For the perpendicular slope, we've got to change the sign so it becomes negative, and we've got to flip the fraction. So 1/3 becomes 3/1, which is 3. So number 8, once again, you can either do your rise over run or you can go to Stat. If you go Stat Edit, your X values are 0 and 6, and your Y values are 3 and 9. So then you would go Stat, Calc, 4, enter, and your slope is 1 because that's what your A is. So the slope is 1. If you're going to be parallel, your slope is still 1. If you're going to be perpendicular, you got to think of that as a fraction, 1/1. Change the sign so it's negative, flip the 1/1, and you still have 1. Once again, I don't care if you do your subtracting or if you do it at Stat. If you were going to subtract on this one, it would be like 8 minus 4 over 6 minus 4. 8 minus 4 is 4, 6 minus 4 is 2, and that reduces to 2. If you took it to Stat, you should get the same thing. Go to Stat, Edit, and your L1 is going to be 4 and 6, and your L2 is going to be 4 and 8. You go back to Stat, over to Calc, choose number 4, enter. A is 2, which is what we already said the slope was. Parallel line is going to have the same slope, so it's also 2. Perpendicular line, you got to change the sign so it's negative. You got to think of that as 2/1 so you can flip it and it becomes 1/2. Number 10, if you subtract, you're going to say 6 minus 4 on top, 9 minus 4 on bottom. 6 minus 4 is 2, 9 minus 4 is 5. So your slope here is 2/5. Parallel slope would be the same thing, 2/5. Perpendicular, you're going to change it to negative and you're going to flip it to 5/2. Really and truly, for this, it's probably faster and easier to keep subtracting like we've been doing, but I just wanted to introduce the Stat to you because eventually we'll start using that more often. Okay, that's all for your notes. You're ready to start your assignment.